Soul America will be different from Mountain America.
You want to see other women?
I want you.
You're free to.
I don't want to.
Then don't.
Do you want to see other men?
Not today.
I'm getting a headache.
Listen to that. People in love didn't talk like that in the good old days of Hollywood, but times have changed. An Unmarried Woman truly is a love story for the 70s, and who's falling in love with whom in today's movies and how they're doing it is a subject we'll be exploring this time on Sneak Previews Take Two, one of those special change of pace shows where Roger and I take a closer look at trends and issues in the movies. And this is Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune. Romance is like anything else in the movies. It goes in and out of fashion, and it comes in different styles. In addition to An Unmarried Woman, the varieties of romance we'll be discussing on this program include a newly divorced couple in Starting Over, and a conflict between family and career in The Seduction of Joe Tynan. But first, let's go way back to the years around 1970 and a less obvious kind of love story.
At the beginning of the decade, Hollywood was making love stories all right, it always has, but the love stories in 69 and 70 were special. They were called buddy films. They featured men linked with other men. These relationships were not sexual, but the love between these men was very, very strong. Women's liberation was on the march at this time, and it seemed that Hollywood screenwriters wanted to avoid this aggressive new woman. They didn't understand her, so they ignored her, and they wrote about just men. Midnight Cowboy was named Best Picture in April '70, telling the story of Dustin Hoffman and John Voight, two hustlers caring for each other deeply in the mean streets of Manhattan. An even bigger hit was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, with Paul Newman and Robert Redford frolicking together in the Old West, only to be romantically gunned down in the end. And on the rare occasion in the early 70s when Hollywood did make a love story about a man and a woman, the relationship was based on tragedy, as in Love Story, where Ally McGraw was saddled with a fatal disease. So, a crippled woman was Hollywood's reactionary response to the new aggressive woman in the world, and Love Story became an awfully big hit.
You know, it's true. In the early 70s, as far as love was concerned, all we got were men palling around with men in a world without women. Or when we did get a woman, she had to be lame, or blind, or deaf, or paralyzed before Cupid could strike.
Yep.
That way, when the boy said he loved her, you could be sure he meant it. I guess Hollywood figured we'd never believe it otherwise in the cynical 70s. Look at this scene from one of the biggest tearjerkers of the 1970s, The Other Side of the Mountain, Part 2.
You're a great guy, Johnny. I had a wonderful summer. But summer's over and it's time to go back to work.
How dare you? I said, how dare you?
If you raise your voice to me, I'm not going to listen.
To imply or say we had, to call it a summer romance. Oh, honey, that's one thing you don't have any right to do.
I'm going in.
Oh, no, you're not. You're going to sit here and listen to what I have to say, even if it's the last time I talk to you. Now, whatever it is you're doing, lady, you're wrong to throw what you and I have together away. And whatever excuse you want to give it, I don't buy it. Because I know you love me. You see, you couldn't fool me about something like that.
See how he dominates her because she's in that wheelchair? Now take a look at Robbie Benson ordering around his girlfriend, a blind figure skater, in ice castles. He's tough. He's going to teach her to skate again the hard way.
Do an axel.
No!
Did you hear what I said? I said you're going to do an axel.
Nick! Can't.
Don't give me that. You're going to set up.
No. What are you doing?
We're going to go around again, and when we're straight out, you're going to do an
Nick!
axel. Shut up! You're gutless. Can't you do it without the TV cameras? You shouldn't have opened your eyes.
I hate you. I really hate you.
I guess that makes us even.
The crippled woman. If those women didn't have their physical problems, they'd probably tell those patronizing guys to bug off. Now let's look at the diseases in the love stories of the 1970s. The Other Side of the Mountain Parts 1 and 2 had a paralyzed woman. Ice Castles had a blind woman. Voices had a deaf woman. Slow Dancing in the Big City had a woman dancer with bone disease. The Promise had a woman whose face was smashed in an automobile accident. And the film that started it all was Love Story, where aggressive and independent Ally McGraw became a lot more attractive to Ryan O'Neal after she was afflicted with leukemia. If you were feeling cynical, you could call these the hold me, kiss me, carry me movies.
You got that right. I think sexual politics was being played at a very high level in Hollywood. The movie makers, the old-time movie makers and directors and writers, I don't think they wanted any part of this new woman. Maybe they feared the new woman in their own personal lives. Maybe they feared it in terms of some woman taking away their job. Whatever it was, they wanted to make that old love story with the big, strong guy and the weak woman. And the only way they could do it in modern terms was to literally sometimes cut the legs off of these women and just make them cripples.
I think so. You never really got in the early 70s a strong man and a strong
Yes.
woman attracted to each other without gimmicks. They just liked each other, a guy and a girl, physical attraction, sex appeal. You didn't get that.
Tracy and Hepburn.
They never got the Tracy and Hepburn picture. The scripts and the directors leaned over backwards to do something to get the new woman of the 70s down on her knees in front of the guy. It was really ridiculous. Maybe they were afraid that the cynical audiences of the 70s couldn't stand just a regular kiss of simple affection. They would go, oh, look, they're kissing, just like kids do at a matinee.
They used Barbra Streisand as a strong character, but oddly enough, in the early 70s, they ignored maybe the strongest woman of them all available to them in Hollywood, Jane Fonda. Between 71 and 75, I don't think she made a major Hollywood picture.
That's amazing.
Some of it may have been politics, but I think a lot of it had to do, she was just too strong for the writers and directors of that time. While the film that changed the direction of Hollywood love stories in the late 70s was An Unmarried Woman, with Jill Clayburgh as a college-educated housewife who is rudely informed by her husband, Michael Murphy, that he's found someone new. Up to this point, she thought they were a very happy couple.
You know, if we do take a place, we're going to have my club up there. I can just see us all lying in the sun, blabbing away. I mean, we talk, we really do. I love our meetings. They're so, you know, just lonesome. Sort of like a continuing story, you know. It's part Mary Hartman and part Ingmar Bergman. I love the women. Marty. Marty, come on. What is it, honey? What's the matter? What is it? What? Tell me.
I'm in love with somebody else. Seeing another woman for over a year. At first, you know, I thought it was just a thing, but it isn't. I love her. I want to live with her. Oh, God, I don't want to hurt you. I want to hurt Patty. But I can't. You don't know her or anything. Her name is Marcia Brenner. She's a teacher.
She's shocked, and then she's going to get angry. In the first part of An Unmarried Woman, Jill Clayburgh goes through a lot of pain. She feels abandoned. She vents all of her anger on her ex-husband, and then this anger, it really connected with the unspoken anger of many women in the audience. Then the film goes in a new direction for Hollywood love stories, one we hadn't seen in a long, long time. Clayburgh receives a terrific offer from Alan Bates, a painter, a seemingly very caring soul, who wants Clayburgh to spend the summer in Vermont with him, but she's just been emancipated. Is she going to jump into another relationship right away? Well, her reaction to his offer is an exciting moment in the film.
What am I going to do up there? Watch you paint, go fishing, go swimming.
Well, it sounds nice, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'll come up for a couple of weekends.
Life is very complicated.
I've been on vacation for 16 years.
Oh, look, listen, I know you want to get out on your own, and I approve. I wouldn't try to stop you.
What do you do you mean you approve?
What?
I don't understand that word. Why are you saying you
Oh,
approve?
look.
I'm not doing this
No,
for your
no,
approval,
listen,
you know.
let me finish,
No, that's
please.
really not what I have on my mind.
Look, all I meant
I
was...
hate that.
Yes. All I meant was that if... Well, spending a few weeks with someone you like, that's not out of line.
How do you know? How can you say that? How do you know what I need, what I want to do for myself?
I think we need a marriage counselor.
Why don't you come back here every weekend?
Because if I stop painting for a few days, I may stop painting altogether.
A big moment in movie history. She walks away from a traditional male-dominated relationship with Alan Bates, even as appealing as he is. Now, many critics thought the film was absurd. They thought any woman would jump at the chance to live with Alan Bates' character. Well, those critics missed the point of An Unmarried Woman. The film was really catching the mood of many women in the audience. They were tired of being closed in by men. They wanted breathing room, room to get to know themselves. And what Jill Clayburgh was saying to these women was, me first, us the couple later. And a whole new kind of love story began to be made in the late 70s then. Love stories where individuals were much more important than the couple.
I think you're right, and I think that's exactly what Clayburgh is telling Bates there in that last scene, which a lot of people did question. She's analyzing it correctly. She's thinking, my first husband was a stockbroker. He had the three-piece suit. Here's the guy with the beard and the paintings. He lives in the loft. But he's really offering me the same deal. It only looks like there's more freedom, but it's his freedom, not mine.
Yes.
My job is still to go to Vermont and cook for him and be the dutiful housewife, and she sees through it, and she won't take it.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of character and the same kind of analysis that you got in those Katharine Hepburn pictures in the 1940s, where Hepburn played a woman who had her own career, her own independence, her own state of mind. She stood on her own 2 feet, and from that base, she then went on to relate to men. And what's funny is, it's been 35 years since Hollywood has really made pictures like that. It's like they lost that idea.
Yeah, but they're coming back now with a vengeance. The journalist Tom Wolfe said that the 70s were the decade of the me generation. Well, what we're getting in the last part of the 70s in terms of films are the years of the me films. Yeah. And what's happening is really these characters are saying, me now, and you know, if they make a sequel, well then we'll worry about the couple then. Very, very strong pictures.
It's almost as if they slid right over the old-fashioned love story altogether. We got another movie like that, this time for the men. Almost every major motion picture does inspire a sequel, and An Unmarried Woman was no exception. In the autumn of 1979, a serious comedy named Starting Over came out, and the critics immediately called it An Unmarried Man. The newly divorced character this time was Burt Reynolds, and in a real change of pace, he wasn't cast as a macho sex symbol, but as a gentle, intellectual, lonely guy who split up with his first wife, moved to Boston to take a teaching job, and met an eligible female played by the original Unmarried Woman, Jill Clayburgh.
I got a job.
Really?
Yeah, I'm going to teach this course at a junior college, and it looks... Do you mind if we talk about you and me?
Oh, please do.
I don't know how to put this without coming straight out with it.
I wish you would.
Well, I've got 2 things that I've just got to get off my mind tonight. One is I'm very nervous about teaching this class for the first time.
Why am I so sure that number 2 is the killer?
I want to have sex with you.
Gulp. I don't like the way you put that. It makes me feel very strange.
I know, it did sound a little bit like Tarzan. It's just that I was trying to avoid the whole romantic thing.
I don't like that either. I hate that. But can't you just personalize it a little? I want to have sex with you, Marilyn.
I want to have sex with you, Marilyn.
I want to have sex with you, Potter. Oh.
Take it easy. I'm not that good.
I think only Burt Reynolds would have the courage to admit that. Starting Over got mixed reviews, but it did a lot of business at the box office, and it was a major hit, and I think I know why.
Well, tell us then.
I will. Reynolds portrayed a newly divorced man who was trying to figure out what had hit him and how to deal with it, and his divorce caused him to really define and analyze himself for the first time. The movie put Reynolds through an experience that's become very common these days, the dramatic and painful process of discovering oneself after a divorce. Once again, we're getting back to the me.
Yeah, it's all me, me, me now. You know what a couple has become in the movies today? It seems that a couple in the movies of the late 70s is two people who happen to be in the same room together for a length of time, and they're both trying to decide at the same time what they want for themselves. They just don't even have the time anymore. Maybe they've all seen failed marriages, or they've either had one, they know somebody that's had one. It's all me. I guess it really is very close to what's going on in society as well.
You know, I've been feeling that about a lot of the films I've seen in the last year, the so-called love stories. You want them to really grab each other, and they don't. They're talking about their priorities, what they want to realize, what their careers are going to mean, how they're going to express themselves. Yes. These people are amazing. All they do is talk. They never kiss. They've been reading Psychology Today for the last 6 years. They've all memorized passages by Gail Shee. They know all the rules of the game. The only problem is they're afraid to play.
I think you got it. Another successful film that focused on the problems of the individual rather than the couple was The Seduction of Joe Tynan, in which Alan Alda, as a U.S. Senator, tries to balance his personal and professional ideas. He wants to run for president, he wants to have an affair with a pretty lawyer, and he wants to keep his marriage with Barbara Harris intact. Like so many movie characters, the love stories of the 70s, Alan Alda wants everything. Just listen as he tries to hold on to his marriage while his wife tries to hold on to her own career.
What do you think about living in Washington?
You mean move there?
I think I need you down there.
You know, I wanted to move to Washington when you first got elected, and you said to stay here so that we could have the weekends to ourselves.
Yeah, well, now I don't have weekends anymore. I have to lecture.
You have to lecture.
Well, do you think we can live on what I make as a senator?
And what about my work?
Well, isn't there a psychoanalytic institute in Washington?
Well, I guess there is, but the one that's accepted me is in New York. And the man I work with, the man who's brought me along to the point where I am now, is also in New York. I don't just work in a building, Joe. There are people there who mean something to me. Sure. Really?
Think about Washington, will you?
Look at that. That's late 70s romance as pure as it can be. They're not talking about whether they love each other. They do love each other. They're talking about whether or not their marriage can allow them to be truly fulfilled as individuals. Now, the individual is more important than the couple, and that old Hollywood be-all and end-all called love, pretty much a forgotten thing in the movies today.
Maybe that's because it's kind of a forgotten thing in terms of most of the people who have been married for 10 or 15 years. The marriages are more routine. You know, sometimes we talk about artistic inspiration and ideas that are in the air. Maybe it's more simple than that. If you stop to think about it, you have this thing that's been with us for a long time called the baby boom. Everybody came home from World War II and had families, and as those kids is growing up, they've been going to the movies. If you look at movie history, you can see where the baby boom was at each point in the last 3 decades. In the early 60s, they were all teenagers. They went to see Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon. In the late 60s, they all went to anti-war movies. That's because they were all being drafted. Yeah. And if you look at them now, they're in the 30s, and you get a lot of these movies now about married couples that are checking their identities out, trying to figure out what their priorities are. Maybe that's just because that's where the audience is. Not the young kids who go to Star Wars, but the older audience.
Well, that's where we are in terms of film critics, oddly enough. People ask how we can keep doing this for all the years we've been doing it.
I often ask myself that.
Well, it's our lives, and we're the movie generation, and I guess you have a good point that it's documenting our lives as we grow up. The one thing that we're seeing here is really how closely films follow life. They're really on top of it. It's good reporting, films like Joe Tynan. It's a tug of war there. Who's going to win? That's what's going on in people's homes.
We're going to get more love stories in the movies. Our generation has to rediscover romance, Gene.
Good point.
Might be possible. Anyway, so let's go back again and check it out. We went from the buddy movies and the Hold Me, Kiss Me, Carry Me movies to the Unmarried Woman, and then the Unmarried Man and starting over to the dilemma of the individual in The Seduction of Joe Tynan. And now in a new movie called Kramer versus Kramer, we have The Divorced Couple. Kramer versus Kramer is an extraordinarily intelligent movie about the modern trauma of child custody fights. Stars Dustin Hoffman as a newly separated father who wants to keep his son, and Meryl Streep as the wife who leaves her husband and child in order to find herself.
forgot my keys. I just got to call the office before they go. Joe, you're going to be real proud of me. I got good news.
Ted.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me just do this. You know Jack Edrich over in accounting?
He committed suicide.
Yeah, hi. Ted Kramer. Listen, I got to get those photos from the retoucher by tomorrow morning, okay?
I'm leaving you.
Honey, please. I can't hear. What? Okay, you too. Thanks a lot. See you tomorrow. You guys eat?
Ted, I'm leaving you. Ted. Keys.
What?
Here are my keys. Here's my American Express card. Here's my Bloomingdale's credit card. Here's my checkbook. I've taken $2,000 out of our savings account because that's what I had in the bank when we first got married.
Was this some kind of joke? Well, I'm sorry that I was late, but I was busy making a living, all right? Come on, okay? Can we stop now?
So, that's everything.
When is Mommy coming back?
Soon, very soon. But come on now, you and I are gonna have some breakfast, okay? Just you and me. Okay, what do you want for breakfast?
Some French toast.
French toast. You want the French toast you got. Let's put up a little water for Daddy. Have some coffee. And we got how many eggs? 2 for you and 2 for me.
Yep.
We got milk. We got butter. We got $5. I got $5 here. You sit here. Okay, and you'll be my #1 helper. Okay, now watch this. One-handed. Here we go. Did you know that all the best chefs are men? I bet you didn't know that, did you?
There you have it once again, the phenomenon of characters obsessed with themselves. I suppose to somebody who's only seen this scene from the movie, it looks like the Meryl Streep character is totally heartless, totally cruel. She's going to walk out on her husband and son. But in the earlier scenes leading up to this, when we see that the Dustin Hoffman character is also just as egotistical. Here's his wife telling him she's leaving. She's walking out on their marriage, walking out on their child, and all he wants to do is talk about the big county land that he doesn't even really listen to her. And he's also basically just a stranger to his son. I really like what you said earlier, Gene, about the modern movie couple consisting of 2 people in a room, each one talking only about himself.
This is a very fine film, and I think if we look back, Kramer versus Kramer, if we look back now, we can see a little pattern developing here. We had a lot of people forgetting the couple, just being alone. Kramer versus Kramer, sort of a hopeful film as it concludes the decade. It's really a story about these people trying to connect to their child, as it turns out in the course of this picture. So instead of just becoming individuals, these people learn that there can be something more, that they can feel whole and good in themselves if they do something for another person. That's a nice switch from all these people, you know, the starting over and Joe Tynan just being selfish in a way.
Instead of the selfishness of the me decade, if you want to call it that, you have these people finding out they can be individuals better if they help each other do that they can cooperate in terms of finding out who each other is and what they want to achieve. And that's kind of, you know, in a way, this film, Kramer versus Kramer, and An Unmarried Woman stand apart from some of these other films. I could almost call them teaching films, or they're entertainment films too, but they're teaching because they show what the next step is. If we sit there in the audience, we can see what Jill Clayburgh has discovered for herself. We can see how Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman have learned something at the end of this film in terms of putting together in their lives what it is they're trying to accomplish. So I think that's kind of important.
Yeah, and as you said, they do it in an entertaining way. And our heart's really with Hoffman and Streep in this film because we want to see things work out well. We've been through a lot of traumas in this whole decade, personal traumas. If you look at the decade in another way, some of the most successful films almost indicate that there's sort of a 2-tiered market when it comes to romantic films. We've got a whole bunch of films for the head. You called them teaching films, intellectual films.
Maybe for people in their 30s or their late 20s.
Yeah, but also there's a lot of films going on, romantic films for the heart, where it's flat-out old-time love, and people really want to see it. Those films have become some of the biggest box office hits around. I'm thinking about pictures like Rocky II, where Sylvester Stallone proposes marriage to Talia Shire. It's as old-fashioned as it can be, but this film works, and it made Rocky II a monster hit.
I was wondering if you wouldn't mind marrying me very much.
What'd you say?
If you wouldn't mind marrying me too much.
Yes. I'd like to marry you.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Let me explain something to you. I'm the man. I'll handle the money from now on, all right?
But I don't need you to handle the money. Before I met you, I was a very successful businesswoman.
Yeah, well, you're crazy.
In the main event, Barbara Streisand falls for Ryan O'Neal. She screams at him for a while, sure, but in the end, she swoons for him, just like in the films of old.
I mean, that's just the way it is between husbands and wives.
What are you talking about?
A wedding.
Whose?
Yours.
What, are you asking me to get married?
Yes.
Why, you pregnant?
Oh, cut it out, Hillary. No jokes. Two people like each other, they should get married. Now, how do you feel about that?
I don't know, kid. I mean, you're rushing me, you know?
What's the matter? Aren't I good enough for you?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, you make me feel cheap.
Cheap? Believe me, kid, you are not cheap.
And also as old-fashioned as you can get was the love story of Warren Beatty and Julie Christie in Heaven Can Wait. It was a remake of a 40s love story.
It's all right. There's nothing to be afraid of.
A series of sweet moments from some love stories at the end of a decade full of problem-filled stories. A simple declaration of love from Warren Beatty. That's what the 80s may hold more of. Sexual politics and the individual, that may take a back seat. The 80s' biggest love stories, I'm predicting, will feature that rarity in the films of the 70s, the loving couple.
You know, Gene, I could almost hear the violins playing when you said that. Reminds me of a Take-Two show we did several weeks ago about the most influential films of the 70s.
Yeah.
Which we talked about how Heaven Can Wait might really be a film that would be imitated a lot in the 80s in terms of a return to the simple love story. So, maybe we're out of analysis. Anyway, that's it for this show. And join us next time for Sneak Previews Take 2, when Gene and I will take a look at Guilty Pleasures, the films movie critics rarely admit they like. We'll reveal just how ordinary our taste can be, and until then, see you at the movies.
Funding for Sneak Previews was provided by this station and by other public television stations.